Hello, my name is Lynn Durham, and I am the Vice President for Institute Relations at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, where it's about 11:45 a.m. And we're glad you all are joining us for this presentation. Welcome to the University Global Coalition's annual meeting, and this session is entitled Embedding Sustainable Development Goals into the Curriculum. Our three panelists will discuss the Mason Impact Program at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. The program's tagline is Mason Impacts Students, Students Impact the World. They will discuss how this undergraduate initiative at George Mason has promoted intentional and connected curriculum through high-impact practices. A central goal of the program is preparing students to tackle global questions and challenges through curricular and co-curricular experiences. They will focus on curriculum impact grants, integrating the SDGs into their general education program, and creating minors that focus on a single SDG. Dr. Jessie Guessford is an associate professor of music and the founding director of music technology at George Mason University. Dr. Guessford has focused on the scholarship of teaching with and about music technology and the music of John Cage. His music, which focuses on human and computer interplay, has been heard throughout the world. Next, Dr. Bethany Usher is the Associate Provost for Undergraduate Education at George Mason and a faculty member in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology. Prior to her appointment as Associate Provost for Undergraduate Education, Dr. Usher served as Director of the Students as Scholars program at GMU, where her leadership has transformed the program into a leading national hub of undergraduate research. And then Kristen Wright is the Director of Civic Engagement at George Mason University. In this capacity, Ms. Wright collaborates with students, faculty, and community partners to incorporate civic learning and community engagement into academic courses and the student experience. Prior to joining Mason, Kristen worked with faculty at the Johns Hopkins Health Professional Schools to develop service learning courses, facilitate dialogue around community engagement and social justice, and connect students with community partners for mutually beneficial service opportunities. So before we begin, a little technical note here for those of you who are new to Blue Jeans especially. Your microphones and cameras are automatically muted throughout this session. To ask questions of the presenters, please use the question and answer tool located on the tool ribbon at the right side of your screen. One last thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the slider bar beneath the videos and content windows, which allows you to adjust the size of each window for better viewing. If you experience any technical issues during the session, please describe the problem in the moderator chat located just beneath the primary chat, and a member of our support team will be happy to assist you. So we are going to actually start the presentation with a video that our friends at George Mason have put together. So if we can please cue the video, and then after that, Dr. Bethany Usher will speak.
What impact can one university, one person, one question make?
The 4 years you're going to spend at Mason are the best years of your life.
We have an opportunity to observe how do I understand the world and what's my role in that.
Curiosity has played a major role in my life. What drives me is the excitement of knowing the unknown.
One of the reasons why I really love Mason is that they give you these opportunities to kind of step outside of the safe space of a classroom and into the real world. You need to go out there and you need to engage with people and learn something from them, and in doing so, you learn something about yourself. It was scary, but it was an amazing experience and incredibly inspiring.
There's so many opportunities to just get out and get working on cool things at Mason. You can be researching literature, or you can be working on a creative project. You can be going to Bangkok and filming music videos.
I wanted my work to have an impact. It doesn't just stop at, okay, this is what you need to know in this class, but there was always like a challenge. learn about other things that go on in the world around us, a lot of other professions, combining different skills, combining different languages, cultures, politics, and using that to push you to do the projects that you're doing.
Entrepreneurship teaches you how to think critically. It's like, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to have my own business. The best thing for you to do is to grow your network and meet as many people as you possibly can. There are so many valuable skill sets that you could learn just by interacting with people.
I wanted to do research since freshman year. I didn't know what it was fully, but I understood that I would enjoy the inquiry or the investigative process behind it. The ability to ask and explore questions, throughout my undergraduate career has been the highlight. Mason will give you opportunities and nurture your abilities and can help you progress in life and achieve the dreams that you have always wanted to achieve.
Take a little step out of your comfort zone
and open yourself up to opportunities.
You have the freedom to explore things that you want to explore.
Ask the questions that you want to ask.
Because you really never know where it will take you.
Meet as many people as you possibly can.
Be open to taking courses that don't seem like they're super related to what you're doing.
And enjoy your time here.
It can radically change what you want to do with the rest of your life.
Mason will give you the tools. Go beyond the classroom to ask the questions that matter. Connect, engage, challenge yourself. What impact can one university, one person make? Let's find out.
Terrific. Can I take over from here? Terrific. Well, thank you. Thank you, Lynn, and thank you everyone for being here. I watch that video and I'm so proud of our students every time that I see it. One of the things you'll see that we'll talk about is this idea that we want our students to understand that we're going to have an impact on them and they're going to have an impact on the world. And one of the major ways we frame that is through the Sustainable Development Goals at Mason. So I wanted to begin by giving an overview of what Mason, who we are, and then Jesse and Kristen will go into some of the programs that we've been doing. So one of the things that's important to know is that George Mason University is, in fact, we're located in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And Northern Virginia. We're the largest public university in Virginia, and we're the newest R1 university, research university in the country. So we are really proud, but we're also really new. We didn't begin as a separate university until 1971. We now have about 38,000 students. We actually haven't lost any students through the pandemic. We've got about 28,000 undergraduates right now, 80 majors across, there are 11 schools, 9 of which are have undergraduate programs in them, and about 200 minors. We are a diverse university, the most diverse university in the DC area and I think in Virginia. And we also have a significant transfer population. So the majority of our students who graduate actually transfer in with credits from someplace else. So we kind of look like an inverted pyramid with more students who are in the junior and senior level than in the freshman and sophomore level. We've also got really pragmatic students. We've got students who are not diverse just in terms of background, but in terms of experience. So we have, not only do we have first generation students, more than 25% of our undergraduate students are not a traditionally aged student population. And so that means that in order to have a really high impact kind of experience, we, in addition to being able to provide a wide array of activities outside of the classroom, we also, our students being really pragmatic, are trying to find credits to be able to graduate in a reasonable length of time, and may, because of their working or their family or other kinds of experiences, may not be able to have time to do a ton of extracurriculars. So we've really been very intentional about building high impact experiences directly into the curriculum and encouraging our faculty to think creatively about that. So one of the things we've done is we started 10 years ago with a really innovative undergraduate research experience where we started building the skills in early in the curriculum and allowing students to be able to do undergraduate research inside the curriculum. And we started thinking about that from a really wide perspective. And when we started seeing the Sustainable Development Goals and we became a signatory university, one of the things we wanted to do was start thinking about how do we help students frame their experience, they're having an impact on the world, through the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we started really intentionally building interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary programs, especially minors, that they're able to be specialists in the field and then use the minor to be able to think in a wide range of ways of how do they apply this and work with others. To be able to use that as a framing for how they were going to have an impact in the world. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done. So we're a signatory on the Declaration on University Global Engagement. We've done embedding the SDGs within our research and curriculum. We've actually got an Institute for a Sustainable Earth, which is one of our research institutes, which has more than 100 of our faculty, and many of our faculty who teach in our minors that are connected to the SDGs are connected to that institute that specifically maps the research we do against the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we're trying to embed and create an environment where students are working on curriculum, undergraduate, graduate students, and faculty, both a curriculum that embeds the Sustainable Development Goals and research agendas, so that they're connecting the research that we're doing that has an impact on the world and the curriculum that they're doing that has an impact on the world. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse to talk about how we've done that and how we encourage, from sort of a university level, embedding the Sustainable Development Goals into the curriculum.
Thank you, Bethany. So I want to talk to you about our first real big attempt at this embedding, and it was through a cycle we call curriculum impact grants. And the curriculum impact grants were set up before this idea of embedding the SDGs into the curriculum, but we're always around this idea of multidisciplinarity, about interdisciplinarity, and really they were originally designed to connect faculty across the campus, to create degrees, to create minors at the intersection of each of the faculty's individual research areas. This was the original mission of the curriculum impact grants. As you can see, I've highlighted a few areas of the original mission. One is really the goal is about creating scaffolded, intentional programs that incorporate experiential learning, which fits really nicely into these larger questions that the Sustainable Development Grants ask. Sustainable Development Goals ask. The other is, built right in, was this idea of local and global challenges. The idea with these grants was not just to propose the question and then leave the students with it, but to actually have them gain the skills to be able to tackle those questions, both during their time at Mason and beyond. For the last 4 years, we've been running these grants. This has been the cycle that we've been using for them. The call gets released in the early part of the calendar year. We hold a workshop in March where we get together the teams of prospective proposals, and we're able to help them work through their ideas and work it into a proposal stage, which are due in May. There's a really quick turnaround, and the awarded grants are actually announced by June. And then the rest of the year is really about cohort meetings with the groups, and we're able to get the groups together to discuss issues, to discuss roadblocks, both in terms of curriculum, university infrastructure. When we're working at these intersectionalities of these different areas, there can be a lot of different ways that the groups are working that cause issues, differences even in because of the curriculum that's already built for the students. So this is a great way for the groups to discuss, talk about what they're running into, and maybe come up with solutions to help each other out. And then there's a final report due in July where they just tell us about their program, about what successes they had, maybe what roadblocks still lay ahead for the implementation of this group. In terms of funding for these grants once received, this is what it looks like. We have $3,000 per faculty, $9,000 in total for whatever the team has. So if you have more than 3 faculty involved, which a lot of these grants do, there's only $9,000 there. The place that we really support is students. We have up to 2 graduate students at $6,000 and up to 2 undergrads at $4,000 each. We really feel strongly about giving these students this position to be part of this curriculum change. I think we feel like the students being involved in either the research behind researching other universities and what they're doing, helping build courses, assignments within the curriculum itself is a really valuable learning tool. Overall, these grants end up being averaging around $35,000 for the year. For this year, we decided to mix it up a little bit and add a new priority. So the priority for this cycle was about looking for programs, majors, minors, even master's programs that are looking to engage with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We really wanted, because of the work of being the signatory on part of the partnership with the UN and already having this research side in the Institute for Sustainable Earth, we really wanted to push the curriculum side. As Bethany mentioned, our students are very practical. They want to take classes that are reaching towards their major, that are reaching towards graduation. So how we can get them involved in programs like this is to really embed it into the curriculum that they're already taking, to get faculty to think intentionally about the curriculum they're developing and add these degrees or these ideas into the programs that they're already offering, or into new programs that the students can explore as a minor. So even through this pandemic, we were really pleased with the 18 proposals submitted, as they were submitted in May of 2020. Of those 18 proposals, 17 of them actually named at least one SDG in their narrative that they wanted to look and explore within the degree program. I say at least one because on average, they have actually engaged with at least 3 of the SDGs. Out of the proposals, then we were able to fund 8 of them. All of the funded proposals actually were directly addressed at least one of the Sustainable Development Goals. Here are the 8 proposals that were funded. I added the Sustainable Development Goal that I think best suits each of the proposals. As I said, several of them listed more than one, usually no more than 3 of the possible goals. What I do want to mention is a couple of things. If you look across the titles, we actually have a large variety of kinds of proposals. We have proposals from the arts. We have proposals from sciences, engineering, healthcare, and well-being. They're all present here. And when you look at the primary Sustainable Development Goal, what you'll notice is there's 5 different development goals shown here out of the 8 proposals. So we don't even have much overlap within what is the primary goal that they are looking for their students to really engage with. So I want to show you one of these Sustainable Development Goals in a little more detail. The grants in a little more detail. This is the activist artist, art as an engine of social justice. It was really focused on, very specifically, this reduced inequalities. The top part is from the beginning of their proposal and really what it's about. It's in a nutshell, wanting to use art as a way to engage the impact of slavery and racism within the institutions of higher education in the US, and specifically looking at it at George Mason. This program is an offshoot of an earlier program that our office had funded that had students researching the lives of the enslaved children of George Mason. So engaging our namesake and the impact and systematic racism that really comes from that name and of that time, and how do we engage with that in a research way? That's how it started. And what this program's trying to do is get students to then look at that same information and how can we use art to make a change, make a difference, and also highlight those differences that are going on. And I like the way that then later in their proposal, they talk about how they're going to talk about and engage with the Sustainable Development Goal. And specifically this idea of promoting the social, economic, and political inclusion of all. I really like that statement. So this is what we're currently doing. And these grants are in cycle right now. In fact, we just had our second cohort meeting. So we don't really have results from like what we want to see from these grants yet, but this idea has started. And I'm going to hand it over to Kristen, who's going to tell you about the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jesse. So as Jesse mentioned, the curriculum impact grant process and especially highlighting the Sustainable Development Goals as an outcome was one of the sort of big first ways that we did this work of really thinking strategically at an institution level about how we can enhance and change our curriculum to have that transformational learning connected to the SDGs. A few of the things that are kind of coming up next for us that will allow us to continue doing this that we want to highlight as kind of examples of ways to work at the institutional level. One is the President's Task Force on Anti-Racism and Inclusive Excellence. So we have a brand new university president, Dr. Gregory Washington, who started this summer. And he has established this task force as a way to really examine everything about the practices of our institution, from the naming of our buildings to the curriculum we have to human resources, policies, and practices, and all of that, and be able to unearth any areas where we're not meeting those institutional goals of anti-racist education and inclusive excellence, and be able to direct significant university fundings towards the things we need to do to actually meet those aims. And so this is going to be a task force of over 100 students, faculty, staff, who are really examining each of these areas over the course of a pretty significant amount of time, at least a year, probably more in many of these cases. But to be, again, really looking at all of the things that we can do to unearth any bias, any really problematic practices, that kind of thing, but do it in an intentional, thoughtful, and strategic way that does have some institutional resources tied towards it. Another one that's really operating in concert with the President's Task Force, but that has specific metrics related to our reaffirmation and accreditation process is the graphic that you see here, which is our quality enhancement plan. That's connected to our reaffirmation process, and our university community elected this topic, transformative education through equity and justice, anti-racist community engagement, as the proposal that, of a number of different competing priorities, was the proposal that really surfaced as the priority for our institution. This is going to be another strategic 5-year process of really instituting a cultural shift and institutional change at George Mason in the areas specifically of curriculum and pedagogy, staff and faculty development, critically responsive student experiences, and community engagement. This will be another place where we can really examine our curriculum, our practices, and make sure that they're in alignment with anti-racist community engagement and moving us as an institution towards equity and justice. And finally, something that happened that led to sort of my arrival at the institution was moving civic engagement from being kind of a really, really decentralized thing to having an office presence that's in our Office of the Provost through undergraduate education. So working with the Mason Impact Initiative, to make sure that we're really positioning civic engagement as a university priority and putting it in a place that it can have the types of academic collaboration and really be positioned in a way that allows us to partner with stakeholders across the campus. And so moving us in that central place allows us to be working with folks we need to have a kind of an opinion and a say in the way that we're making curricular shifts. And have it elevated to that place. And so all three of these really are going to be working together to continue transforming our curriculum, making sure that it is in alignment with the goals that we really have in this institution. And so finally, get the next slide. Thanks, Jesse. So finally, what all of this really allows us to do is answer that question that you heard both Bethany and Jesse mention, which is our sort of Mason Impact slogan, which is Mason impacts students, student impacts the world. We really are very thoughtful and interested in answering this question of how students should be different by the time they leave George Mason from when the time they entered. And we believe through these sort of structured curriculum experiences that are looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, that are looking at anti-oppressive frameworks, that we can really help prepare students to be able to leave George Mason, not only with the curriculum, but with this experientially focused curriculum that will prepare them to be able to tackle these global problems, tackle these challenges in whatever career they do it, and to be able to do it in really interdisciplinary ways. And so that's one of our primary, aims through doing all of these large curricular shifts and kind of really making sure that we're doing it at the central institutional level with buy-in from stakeholders across campus. So before we turn it over to Q&A, I want to pass it back to Dr. Bethany Usher to share a few last thoughts.
Terrific. Thanks to both you, Kristen, and to Jesse. One of the things you'll see in what we're trying to do is we're trying to set an environment where we help both our students and our faculty to be able to think about how we have an impact on our students and how our students have an impact in the world, using the Sustainable Development Goals as a way of framing that for them to see what kind of impact they can have. So we don't want to tell people what to do. What we want to do is create the environment where they can do it, and we do that through the curriculum, through these grants, and through the kind of projects we're doing. So with that, I'm happy to open it up for any questions and to hear what other people are also doing to be able to engage in their own environments so that they can embed this in the curriculum.
Great. Thank you so much to all of you. We appreciate it. I'll start out, and we are starting to get some questions in the Q&A, so please do put your questions in Q&A, and any ideas, you also can put that in the chat if you would like to. But let me start, as I heard this, Bethany, and I'm going to ask you, so with the impact grants, that's obviously, funds are tight, resources are tight. How did you all decide to prioritize this in your funding to allow those to happen?
That's actually a really good question. One of the things we realized is that we could impact the greatest number of students by embedding this into the curriculum. And so by thinking through how we do it curricularly rather than thinking about, we've done some things to be able to engage students in these questions that involve like using work study money to get students involved in individual projects. We do a summer team project, which is very much a multidisciplinary, single-focused kind of project. But in terms of thinking about where we can impact the greatest number of students, this turned out to be a good place, especially now. So we have protected it through the next year. So, even though there have been budget, implications from the pandemic, because it is so important. And because we've actually got support from across the university, the origin of thinking about the minors in the way we are right now in particular is that I was working with one of our faculty members in the engineering school. And so Oscar Barton came to me and was saying, we've got, 5 electives for our students in mechanical engineering, but they all are taking extra mechanical engineering classes, but that's not helping them see what they're learning, how it fits in a greater perspective. What can you do to help me, think about what else they could be taking to be able to fill this? And some of it was, as we've talked about, some of those elective classes are part of their general education. And so we started saying, well, let's make sure we can map the general education to the Sustainable Development Goals. And then we can help students, if we frame it, they'll put it together. So if we start framing the minors under the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're also part of the grand challenges for engineering, and those map not perfectly, but closely together. And so that was the framework that 2 years ago started this. And we had such good buy-in from everywhere, from engineering all the way through business. Actually, one of the other presentations that's happening at this conference is our Business for a Better World, and through the research areas. So that we made it a real priority in the end.
Thank you.
And can I answer the question?
Sure. Go right ahead.
So, Elena, this is actually a really good question. We actually have something called the Patriot Green Fund, which has been a partner with our undergraduate research office for a while. The Patriot Green Fund was built when we first started thinking about sustainability on campus a few years ago, and it actually comes directly at our facilities. They give students and faculty teams grants to be able to create a greener, a more sustainable environment on campus. And so we've actually, I sat on the original group that started creating those grants. Our director of undergraduate research now is one of the faculty members who helps advise that group. And so we've been, and that's done everything from creating a sustainable food forest on campus to working on green roofs and in our beehives that we've got in our bee business. It's actually is what the Business for a Better World is talking about. So we've really been lucky in that we've had a close partnership with the facilities, and we actually we'll refer students back and forth, and in some of our summer team projects, we in fact share funding. So if there's a project that's asking for additional, the kind of money that they need for infrastructure to be able to build something so that they can do a project, including we've got a new facility on the Potomac River where we're studying questions about pollutants and biodiversity in the Potomac River. Facilities has been a fabulous partner with us there. So I think that especially the sustainability person in your facilities area would be a great person to sit down and just brainstorm with in terms of what can you do to connect, and in what areas, what majors, what minors, or what kind of other programs might be there.
Great. All right, I'm going to ask a question from Rebecca Hull, who sent one in, and she asked, and this is for any of you who wants to answer, I'm joining from the Center for Serve, Learn, Sustain at Georgia Tech. My question is, what models, frameworks, or principles inform George Mason's approach to experiential learning and community engagement? So, for example, asset-based community development principles have shaped the approach at, say, the Serve, Learn, Sustain. Any of you?
Kristen, do you want to take that?
Yeah, great question. So, I would also echo that an asset-based approach is something that's critical to our work, especially positioned where we are, being outside the DC region, but being in an area that really has a community that has its own identity, its own issues that it experiences. But then again, it's sort of the backdrop is also in the nation's capital. Having an approach that is our partners have answers, our partners come to the table in the spirit of true partnership, I think is really a critical component for us. Another framework that I think I've certainly used, and I think a lot of our partners are using as we talk about some of this really decentralized work that we're doing, which is the task force, the QEP, these other elements, is a collective impact framework, which is kind of gets its roots in community organizing. But it's a framework that, broadly looks at the idea that we have a number of different entities that might be working towards similar goals. There needs to be some backbone support. So in both of these groups, in the quality enhancement plan, there's going to be a committee that's that backbone support. That's the engine making sure that we're moving the needle towards where we want to go, but we're not directing it on our own. As Bethany said, this isn't meant to be telling people exactly how they need to do it, how they need to change their curriculum, but giving the support, instructors, and instructions and resources to be able to have others succeed. The same with the President's Task Force. That's another sort of collective impact framework agenda that's saying we have a group of people who have a similar goal. They're going to be that backbone support to make sure that we can keep something moving forward. But we're not going to tell you exactly how to do it, but we're here to make sure that it happens and be an accountability arm for some of those outcomes being met. The last thing I would say quickly is I think a critical service learning approach where we're looking at power dynamics. We're looking at how we shift those power dynamics to be able to position people at all levels of our institution and in the community towards success, regardless of kind of what their identities are, what power they come in with, privilege, that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. I do want to ask Jesse one question before I go back to the questions that have been submitted. Jesse, you're a faculty member. As a faculty member, I think SDGs are so interdisciplinary in nature anyway. How have you found the faculty? Are they open to really crossing disciplinary lines to work with other faculty to embed this? Or talk a little bit about faculty.
Yeah, actually, I feel like this has actually opened up a lot for faculty. It had given them the permission to do exactly that, to cross lines, to really look at their research and see its intersectionality there, right? Most people are researching in these not perfect silos, right? And their research reaches out beyond. And this is such a great way for them to take their research and think about how it affects curriculum, it affects students, and who else on campus do they want to work with and feel like their students need to know, right? I think you'll see a lot. In fact, I saw the question, so I can just kind of answer this about climate change is a great example of this, right? So it's the people who are studying climate, but then also the people who are doing policy, right, and governmental policy. And it's about those two different fields working together, right, to create students who are ready not just to study climate, but to talk about it with the general public, right, and go out there and really make a difference with both the research side of it, but also the discussion, right, and how to get that information and the correct information out to the public to make a difference in the world. So,
right.
Long story, yeah, faculty have, I think, been really embraced this. Like, There are about 75 faculty involved in this year's proposals alone, 75 different faculty. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
All right, I'm going to go to Luisas Question. Luisa is joining us from Columbia. She said, I found this very interesting, and I think that they will start embedding SDGs into the curriculum. It's hard work and requires great institutional effort. Do you have any advice for an institution that is just starting on this? How did you start? Bethany?
I'll start with that, but I'm going to totally echo what Kristen was saying. I think it's got to be, having done several of these kinds of institutional change kinds of initiatives, you need a couple of things. You've got to have an impetus, and something like becoming a signatory, right, is a really good impetus to be able to start a process like this. And then from there, being able to get both grassroots support as well as institutional support for doing it. So what Kristen's describing in putting together, and what people don't want to work on committees that are like, oh, I have to go and somebody's going to report on something. But if people feel like they're going to make a difference and they're going to do something that they believe in, then they will be really committed to being a part of it. So putting together a group of people who aren't there because they got nominated because it's the next big thing, but because they're actually committed to doing this, and having them work together to be able to create some goals, and then having the institution itself say, we support this. It's a value for us as an institution, and tell us what you need to be able to accomplish this. In that sense, that's how our curriculum development grant started, was people needed a little bit of support for being able to step away from the things they were individually doing to have some framework for being able to work together across disciplines, to be able to embed this, to think curricularly. So I would really suggest being able to have some sort of campus community and asking people to volunteer, and making sure that the leaders of your institution are also, vocal in saying that this matters, that this is the kind of thing the university does. So getting both of those happening at the same time, and then focusing on sort of a short-term, long-term plan. What can you do in the immediate? Right? Are there some people who are already working on this that you can elevate and be able to say, these are models of what we're trying to do? And then being able to move from there for what your long-term goal is. How many of these, how many of your students? But I would also say making sure your students are involved, right? Being able to say that that they're interested, and these are the kinds of things I'd like to see. Because often we think we know, but it turns out we don't often. And so being able to sit down with them as you're working along with this, saying, is this the kind of thing that interests you, is a good idea. Jesse, do you have anything?
I was going to add, I like what you said. I was going to add, the other thing is what we give faculty in terms of money is not very much, right? Honestly, for a year long, but it's enough to, one, kind of hook the faculty in, right? And get them to say that this is something important, but also providing money behind it tells their administration, department chairs, deans, right, that the university feels this is important, right? That the larger administration has put something into this. And I think that gesture alone does a lot. We're now finding, after 4 years of this, we're finding that leverage is actually quite useful, right? And the deans are now asking us, like, who got it from our college, and why didn't we get more of them? And so it's become a really useful tool to allow a lot of these innovative changes to happen, because just that little skin that we put in is enough to get other people to notice. So I would also echo that it doesn't take a lot. We've added the grad students and the undergrads along the way. They were smaller before, but that little bit can really make a big difference in how people perceive the grants.
Right.
Can I add one more thing? We're also revising our tenure and promotion guidelines, and so making sure that we include this kind of curricular innovation and partnerships with others across the university, rather than singularly publishing in their own field in very traditional ways, is really important for being able to signal that their investment of time in this is worth it. And what we really find is it gets the passion. Like, one of the things is that mid-career faculty are the least happy, right? People who have gotten tenure and they have been working to a thing, being able to be supported in doing something they feel like makes a difference, that they care about, really helps that, and that's one of the places where we see a lot of faculty who really get involved, is they've got a chance to be able to frame what they're doing, and really it's kind of their passion too. Kristen's been working with a group of faculty who actually had sort of started assembling before she got here, really looking at community engaged research and curriculum. Do you want to say anything about that, Kristen?
Yeah, there's a learning community that, again, as Bethany said, founded kind of before I arrived, and I had the benefit of having a good amount of action that had really been grassroots action, that they started a lot of the institutional advocacy around what might accounting for community engaged research and teaching look like in promotion and tenure, and what models are there, and what are some of the sort of champions we can find across the institution to help us move this forward. And so they've done some great work, benchmarking with what other institutions are doing, and doing a lot of that advocacy and pushing, so that, it's not me necessarily who's doing it in an administrative faculty role saying, this is something that I think is important, but it's actually teaching faculty who are at really different, we have a department chair who's in that group, and then we have everyone from, lecturer up to associate professor and full professor who's in that group, who's advocating the same way. And so it's that kind of grassroots energy that I think helps to continue, moving it forward. So it's not always those of us in some of these administrative roles asking those questions.
Great. Well, we're getting close to time. We have one more question, but before I say that, I would like to say here at Georgia Tech, we are just starting really with our new president who came from George Mason, and he has fully embraced the SDGs, and we are starting with a mapping exercise and looking at really all the different areas, all the different curricula at Georgia Tech, and to find out where the SDGs are already embedded that we don't know about, and really looking to kind of just figure out that heat map of where it already is and what we need to enhance that. So I wanted to give that as well. Last question from China. So we're thrilled to have someone still awake in China who has joined us. The question is, what's your experience with faculty members when integrating SDGs into their existing curriculum framework, especially for the humanities subjects? Is there any incentives from the university level in doing so?
Jesse, as a music faculty, I'll let you answer that.
So the incentives beyond the financial one, we're working on promotion and tenure incentives as well, and getting this curricular change to be part of that process. We actually haven't found a big difference between, we have pretty much even support around the colleges that have undergrad programs are involved. We're actually seeing more support out of some of our more involvement out of some of our smaller colleges that hadn't been as involved in the past, are really starting to be pulled in by the bigger colleges, which is really nice. Science is bringing in our policy people more, for instance. So I don't see a difference, and often they're mass, like there was one listed that said STEM in society. That's actually a really big push out of the humanities. Our history and sociology professors are actually looking at how STEM affects our society as well, right? With the kind of global push towards STEM education, what does that do, and how do we interact through literature, through art, through all these other things? And it's what's great about programs like that is really how we want our students to ultimately think, right? Is that they're taking classes in all these different places, part of our general education, which we call Mason Core. They're taking all these classes, and we wanted them to really see the connection. So when they head off to an engineering class or an art class, they see how those two have merged and create these cool synergies between the information being learned. So we haven't seen much of a difference, really, ultimately.
One of the things we talk about is Jesse was talking earlier about the enslaved children of George Mason. That has resulted in a project where, as we've been remodeling some parts of our campus, there was a whole debate about, we've got a statue of George Mason who is, on campus. It started a whole debate about how we were going to look at the legacy of slavery. Since we're a young university, we don't have some of the challenges. We weren't built with enslaved labor specifically, but we're named after a slaveholder. One of the things that we've done in terms of history and architecture is we've actually we're putting new sculptures on campus where you look at George Mason through the footsteps, standing in the footsteps of several of the people who we've discovered, the students did the research, that were enslaved by him. and read the history and look through the statue at him. So it's able to embrace the work of the students and be able to use that as a perspective building. So I would say, I think one of the most interesting things is often teamwork is something STEM fields do, and humanities often feel like they're isolated. One of the things, or sometimes that a single humanities person is brought in to bring perspective on a STEM project. I would say that one of the things that I think a lot of this has done is created more teamwork around in our humanities faculty, and they bring STEM faculty in sort of a way of flipping that, so that they help bring in a different perspective into a more humanities-based project. But I echo Jesse, I don't think we've had any lack of participation by any single unit.
That's great. Well, we are out of time, but I want to thank our three panelists so much. Bethany, Kristen, and Jesse, thank you. That was fantastic information. Thank to everyone who joined us. I hope you'll flip over now. The closing plenary is just here happening from 12:30 to 1, so I hope you'll flip over to that. And we really appreciate everyone being part of this. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.